Welcome to the Tourism AI podcast, where we talk about all things at the intersection of artificial intelligence and tourism. Today we are talking, Kendel and I are just talking about some current events and some things happening in the news. And as I was preparing for the podcast today, I kind of got this overall sense of, this sort of shift happening, I guess, in the dialogue in the AI space around some of this kind of these ideas of sovereign AI and sort of how governments are getting involved and how the geopolitics is starting to creep into the AI space more, I would say, at a level that it's hitting everybody. So yeah, well, it feels to me, Kendall, like we have a bit of a theme in our stories today. Not that it was on purpose, but I feel like these are just the stories that are kind of making the news today. So with that, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Thanks, Peter. Yeah. So the first article I came across for this, OpenAI faces heat over data sovereignty and tourism implications. So this is a CBC report that was put out, and it is about growing concern in Canada over OpenAI's access to local data without transparency or localized infrastructure. So this really kind of talks about fears from the Canadian AI researchers and privacy advocates around our data sovereignty, our autonomy, and just even the benefits of having like data centers in Canada. So, I mean, let's just dig into this. This is a big topic. Like you said, it's a meaty episode. Initial reactions to that headline and to the opening statement.
Well, I guess I'll start by saying I'm happy to see the headline. I'm happy that we have a minister of AI, Honorable Evan Sullivan. So that's good because these are really big questions and really important questions, and there's sort of a lot tied up with this. So, one of the things I always talk about in my keynote presentations, Kendall, is the sort of Jensen Huang's. He's the CEO of NVIDIA. His 5 waves of AI adoption, and sort of the biggest one is AI sovereignty, or the last one, I guess, in the sort of 5 waves is AI sovereignty. And it's interesting because all of these things aren't happening sequentially. They're kind of happening all at the same time, right? So obviously this conversation is about, nations and their AI sovereignty and sort of data centers and all the things they need to be thinking about. I think we need to be thinking about this like now and a lot. So obviously this is not a new debate. There's always a debate around housing data in Canada versus housing data in the United States, and where servers are located and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting because really there's this U.S. Cloud Act, and really what it means is it allows the U.S. government to access data from U.S. companies regardless of whether it's physically stored.
Yeah, at my past place of employment, it was always really important. That was a kind of something that was often looked at by procurement is the host data in Canada. But what you're saying now with this US Cloud Act is that it doesn't even really matter if it's just Canada based. If it's US owned, they have access. So, let's just bring this back to tourism for a minute. Like, should DMOs require that their AI tools not only have their data housed in Canada, but should they be built by Canadian companies?
Yeah, I think so, but it's a challenging one, right? So even built by Canadian companies is not an easy sort of question to answer, right? So, as you know, we're building our own AI tool, and this article certainly has me thinking about that. And, at the end of the day, we have to build it on a cloud. We have to have cloud servers, and we have to have some technology that we're using. And it's sort of like as you're building out your tech stack, it's not that really easy to sort of separate and say, oh yeah, this is Canadian, unless you do everything by yourself, all in, and completely create it from scratch, which is not obviously a very cost effective way of doing things. You're kind of stuck, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be certainly digging into this, but, I would say that in-country hosting alone may not be enough to ensure true data sovereignty, right? So, I mean, we've talked about this with regards to indigenous tourism and potentially open source versus closed source AI tools, and maybe building your own infrastructure on sort of open source tools and then having them stored in your own sort of cloud or in your own sort of infrastructure is probably the answer if you really care about and truly sort of want to protect data sovereignty. But I think this is one where obviously, you need to get a lot of legal help. You need to get sort of a lot of IT help. There's a lot of sort of really strategic decision making that has to go along with this. And, the other question I'd ask about this is sort of like, the whole data question always to me is like, there's certainly certain data that you need to absolutely try to keep private, and it really matters, and certain data that it's like, if it's public facing, it's your marketing, it's your chatbots in your communications, like that's all public facing anyway. So, really to what extent does that matter? So sometimes I think it's just a matter of thinking about your data and maybe categorizing your data in terms of like, this is sort of a whatever data. It's open to the world anyways, so it doesn't really matter versus this is very proprietary, very sensitive data.
Yeah, that's very true. We don't want to kind of slow ourselves down. You just spoke to this a little bit, just in terms of, the type of data that is accessible, and this kind of brings the point of like ethical AI data. So, is there any frameworks or like what recommendations would you give to anyone? But we're talking about tourism, so particularly in tourism, to help organizations just verify ethical AI data usage.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. There likely are some frameworks out there. I know certainly a couple, I guess, concepts, maybe not frameworks as much as data minimization, right? So collecting only the data that is genuinely needed for a specific service, like, not just collecting data for the sake of collecting data and being mindful of where you store that data as well, but being having a minimalist approach with respect to data collection. Certainly informed consent, giving travelers clear information and control over their own data as much as possible. That's sort of another kind of concept, I guess, or principle for people to be thinking about. Bias migration, actively working to prevent AI algorithms from discriminating against certain groups. Those are all different types of sort of like frameworks or concepts that DMOs and other organizations should be thinking about with respect to kind of an ethical data AI usage. Obviously, human accountability. Ultimately having humans responsible for the decisions, even if they're assisted by AI. I think that's a really important one to have at the forefront. And then, really transparency, clearly communicating how and when AI is being used, how and when data is being stored, all those kinds of principles. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, we're probably going to be in this buyer beware kind of world, and we need to have the right disclosures, the right transparency, the right accountability, and things like data minimization, informed consent, just to sort of try to protect ourselves and also protect the consumers that we're serving.
Do you think that, an article like this, OpenAI is kind of knocking at our door? Do you think this would, I don't know, almost like give a little bit of a kick in the pants to our national AI initiatives?
I mean, based on the article, it sounds to me like definitely our politicians are having meetings and sort of focusing and having these conversations. We need to be investing in homegrown AI infrastructure and homegrown AI companies. Certainly, there's a lot of that going on, right? We know there's a lot of grants and there's a lot of like funding programs available to sort of support AI initiatives domestically. But I think these are the kinds of things the government should be asking about as well. And I think I'd like to see a pretty comprehensive overall strategy from the federal government that really attacks data sovereignty directly and talks about how we're going to sort of protect ourselves. Because it actually reminds me, Kendall, of I did a course in university. It was called Global Television and Film. And it was a fascinating course. And I learned a lot in that course about the preservation of culture, heritage, and language through global television and global film, and the kind of protectionism that happens. And for good reasons. Obviously, we have some protectionism in Canada around Canadian content requirements and things like that. And I think the similar principles probably need to apply here. But obviously, it's a messy and complicated world. We know we have negotiations happening with the Trump administration. We know that China's trying to, negotiate with us on EVs currently, and so it's complicated, right? We need to find the balance between really protecting our own data sovereignty and our own culture, heritage, and language, similar to how we do in the film and television industry, by sort of mandating a certain amount of, I guess, Canadian content or Canadian AI, whatever, talent, companies, whatever that looks like. But at the same time, I think we're just a small country population wise. There's only so much we can do. We have to also be, cognizant of the fact that we can't do this alone. And so I think it's, the government probably can help Canadian companies here by providing some principles and some concepts and putting out white papers and, partnering with academia on these things and certainly supporting companies. I know in Canada, for example, we have Cohere, uh, which is a, which is a Toronto-based enterprise AI company that's doing some good work, and they've recently partnered with the federal government. Those are the types of partnerships that matter because we need to build up our own Canadian AI skill set and technology and capabilities, so that we can actually we can actually have a future where Canadian sovereignty is actually a possibility. Because right now, I'm not sure if it's fully possible to totally protect our own sovereignty on this one.
Yeah, just in terms of, like you said, not the red tape and the hoops that everyone has to jump through to get anything moving. It could take a long time, and as we know, this is an industry that is moving fast. Like, you need to be kind of on top of it to get things done.
Well, and again, it's like it's to me, it's beyond that a little bit, Kendall. It's sort of like again, there's all these global negotiations going on and all this geopolitics going on. Is sort of like, where are our hard lines in the sand, and what are we not willing to bend on versus where are we willing to be flexible? And it's hard. Like politicians aren't in an easy position on this one, but I would say AI sovereignty is probably one of the ones we should really be very, very firm on. And I just don't. I am afraid that we're going to sell ourselves to the highest bidder because there's going to be some election perk there. I don't know. That's just me being a cynic, I guess, but hopefully not.
Okay, well, before we move to the next big headline, do you have anything else to add on that topic?
I mean, I would just say that these are questions that every tourism organization should be asking about and talking about. Again, sort of thinking about where closed source AI fits and where open source AI fits and where the data sovereignty really matters and where it doesn't. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of sort of some companies you hear about, and it's like, well, we can't use AI because it's there's some data issues that we're concerned about, and it's like, well, that doesn't mean you can't use AI. That means maybe in these areas you shouldn't use AI, but over here you're completely open. I think we need to have a nuanced conversation about this in companies, in society, obviously at Tourism AI Network across the board, and it has to be nuanced. It's not just sort of like a black and white one size fits all kind of conversation.
Yeah, I kind of think that statement, oh, we can't use AI because of data, but I think that's a bit of like an out for some companies, to be honest. I've experienced that
Mhm.
myself, and I just think it's an out to not have to do the training, not have to do the investment, not have to evolve. Yeah, it's a really easy out, and it's unfortunate because obviously these companies are going to fall just more and more behind as long as they hold that
Yeah,
stance, right?
yeah. But if you're really concerned about it, certainly deep dive on who the Canadian companies are and understand what their data privacy and sovereignty sort of positioning is, right? I think that's where things like responsible AI use policies, obviously transparency, all these types of things matter. Again, we're building a tool and I'm going to be asking questions about this. Can we use Cohere instead of OpenAI? Or can we use an open source versus a closed source model? What are the options and the implications? I'm going to be asking all those questions because obviously it's to our advantage to be solid on the data privacy and protection side of things for our own tool, for Canadian customers at least. And then obviously we'll have our US customers, which it'll be curious and interesting to see from their perspective what's going to matter, right? So yeah, it's pretty complicated, right?
Okay, the next big headline is from just before the weekend, I believe. And the headline is Google launches Gemini for enterprise. So, this is bringing AI agents into the workplace. And so, they just unveiled this, and it was just days after OpenAI launched their AI agents. And this is a full service agent platform, and this is for business operations. It's building onto Gemini's existing capabilities, but it's adding a user friendly integration with corporate tools, workflows. And so this could be a really easy way for operators, tourism businesses to implement some automations. Initial reactions to the headline?
Yeah, I mean, I think both sort of there's this Google release and then OpenAI's release of their own agent platform. And I think it all speaks to, obviously 2025, the year of agents, but really the end of 2025, sort of the time when agents become really real. And so, I think this is the beginning of these types of announcements. I think we're going to see even simpler agentic platforms. Like I haven't tried Google's. I'm going to have to obviously pony up the whatever a month and pay for 3 months and try it. But in OpenAI's agent platform, I did try it, and you still require a bit of coding and understanding and sort of computer logic, if you will, to make it work. It's not overly complicated, and certainly a person can use a tool like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini to get help with what do I put here? How do I fill in this? So really, theoretically, I think just about anybody can build an agent now with the help of an AI tool, but they're still not sort of complete plug and play, go from there. So, but it's the beginning of that. And I think we're going to see these agentic tool builders everywhere baked into every single AI tool. And obviously they're all going for vendor lock-in, right? They're all trying to become the vendor that you use for everything, which has pluses and minuses. Obviously, as a Google company, all of our data is there anyways. Theoretically, it makes sense. Similar to the conversation we just had previously about data sovereignty, do companies need to be thinking about AI tool sovereignty? And do you build it on a native platform like Gemini or OpenAI's platform, or do you build it either on your own platform or somebody else's platform where you can choose tools based on the task and based on sort of the changing environment? And yeah, those are going to be kind of individual decisions for individual companies.
I, as you know, feel like I can't keep up with all the announcements. We have a group chat with between me, you, and Juan, and you guys are always posting things in there. And for me, I'm just like, oh my God, there's so much. And I'm like, I'm in this world. So I can only imagine for others who aren't, it's like just the change is crazy. So, kind of at first when I saw this, I was like, okay, what is the difference between these two things, between OpenAI's and Google's? Because I'm like, are they just kind of rolling out the same things, competing with each other? And just on the quick little look that I did, it seems like OpenAI's is, like you said, more of that developer focus, more some light coding, whereas the Google's version is kind of like more user friendly, no coding involved. So do you think then that they are competing, or is it more of like a complement?
I mean, I think they're sort of competing for sure, definitely competing, but I think they're kind of approaching it slightly differently. So, Google's enterprise out strategy is sort of built deeply to integrate with businesses' existing workflows and infrastructure, especially Google Cloud and workspace ecosystems. So it's really designed to be the front door for an AI company, making it easy to embed these tools, people are already using. Whereas OpenAI's really got a platform revolution strategy. They're just trying to become the platform. And so it's a bit of a broader vision. Really, OpenAI is trying to make ChatGPT the operating system for AI, period. And then, it's sort of building on top of it. Whereas, again, with Gemini, it's a little bit more, Gemini just has a broader suite of tools and a broader suite of different platforms. And so it's really more integrated in and amongst the Google sort of suite and or building on top of the Google suite into your own interface. So they're kind of going after the same people and competing, but from a bit of a different angle.
This is just kind of like, I want your opinion on this because it's something that I struggle with myself. So obviously, like internally, we have SOPs, like so procedures, policies for how we do things. And it feels like with, all these rollout of new tools and they all are great and they all have benefits. And there's a way that we can like test and try and use these tools in different workflows. But what I struggle with, Peter, is like, let's just say one SOP that involves some AI workflows. And I feel like there's so many changes where it's like, okay, we could be doing it with this and it's better, that it's so hard to keep on top of even just like doing writing a policy internally for how we use these tools. This is kind of off the cusp here, but like, what is your, I guess, recommendation for businesses who are, they're hungry to adopt AI, but it's hard to kind of like pick one system or like one thing and stick with it? Or do you just keep
Yeah.
changing?
Well, so like I think your experience, Kendall, here at Tourism and Network is maybe a little bit different from the experience of most other people in most companies because we do change between and we're experimenting because we're trying to stay on top of all of it, right? So most companies that I talk to have just decided they're going to go with Copilot with Microsoft, or they're going to go with Gemini, or because they're a Google company, or they've already picked, ChatGPT. And so most companies and most people I talk to are sort of kind of like almost locked in to some extent. But having said that, I think we're going to get beyond the ChatGPT versus Google versus this, and we're going to get more into very specific niche tools in 2026. So obviously, again, I'm going to sort of pick on our own tool, but we're building a tool specifically for tourism, and it's going to be have a lot of built-in sort of tourism specific features, right? And so you know, so there it'll make sense to use that tool, even though you might still use ChatGPT, right? And so I think the big thing I'll say though to kind of answer your question is companies shouldn't sort of overthink it. It's better just to pick a tool and run with it and understand that all of the tools generally work the same, right? So we provide training and it's how to do context engineering and sort of the principles and what are deep research tools versus regular large language models versus reasoning models. And so we sort of teach principles, and those principles really are the same no matter what the tools are. And so, I think that advice I give is just pick a tool and run with it and go with it, but also realize that basically the general principles of how those tools work are the same across the board. And I think your decisions shouldn't be so much as, and we're even seeing this now, the decisions shouldn't be in as much as which one is the best tool in the market today based on some evaluations. It's like which one makes sense most for your business. So again, we're a Google company. Gemini is a great product. It makes sense for us to use Gemini, even though that's not our number one tool. Just because, again, we're testing all kinds of tools, right? So I think it's sort of like think about it in the bigger picture of the context of the business, right? And what does the business need and what makes sense for the business based on the business's goals. And then the tools are just a tool choice after that.
Yeah, that's fair. Getting back to the agents here, are these some things that tourism teams can build on their own? Or is this something that, you should get a vendor to help you with if you wanted to explore building an agent for your team?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question to answer because I think it really depends on the actual company itself, right? So certainly if you have technical team members, then absolutely these are things you can build on your own. In fact, I advised a destination last week about we were talking about they're going to hire us to do some work with them, not only AI work but marketing work and some other stuff, and they were asking me about hey, we were thinking about hiring a developer to help with the website, even though you guys might do the website for us. And I said, yeah, absolutely, hire that developer. Like, you need technical skills on your team, whether it's doing website development, whether it's integrating a chatbot, whether it's testing that chatbot, whether it's fixing the chatbot when it breaks, whether it's creating other capabilities. Like, every company in the world needs to start thinking about how to become a data company and more technically capable company, right? And now that's easier said than done because for some companies that's not possible, right? And so in those cases where you're 2 to 3 or 4 person company or 5 person company and everybody's really busy, you're probably just gonna partner with somebody that can be your technical solutions provider, right? But I think everybody in today's world should start learning a little bit, at least enough to be dangerous and ask the right questions. And the other thing I'll say about this before I stop is, don't underestimate the power of these tools to help you work with technical people. And so we built something on the web development side a little while ago that was a little bit out of our wheelhouse. And we said, sure, we'll do it. I knew my developers can do it, but it was outside of my technical ability. I used ChatGPT to go back and forth with my developers. I asked, my developers came back with a proposal and some details, and we think we should use these plugins and these tools. And I went to ChatGPT and said, here's what my developers are considering. Here are the client's perspectives and considerations. Are these the best tools? And then I got some and explained it to me in grade 12 English or grade 8 English or whatever it needs to be. So I think these tools really gave people a lot of power and autonomy and authority, even if they're not the technical people with hands on keyboards building the thing. It can make you a lot smarter, a lot faster, and ask the right questions if you know how to sort of use the tools for that. But having said that, I think if it's possible for you to consider bringing on technical resources, I would advise all companies to think about doing that.
That's great. Great advice too to use the tool. I think that's such an underrated hack is actually ask the tool what it, how to do things, but also what it needs from you to answer your question. It
Yeah.
sounds so counterintuitive, but it works so well.
You know what? I'm going to tell you a story about the tool we're building. And, we're working with a very, very senior, very capable technical team that's going to build it for us. And I actually did a whole bunch of research and did all my homework and was sort of figured out what I want to do and what I want to build. And then I actually worked through ChatGPT to build like a technology stack. And then I sort of sent it to them and I said, this is what ChatGPT said based on what I want to accomplish. I have no idea if it's any good. And actually, I got feedback from the technical company and they were like, man, this is like a really well thought out technology stack. Like, it's actually better than anything we would have come up with on our own. And like, there was some really good innovation and good thinking in here for how to make this really like work really well. So that was a good proof point to me that, like, you know what, like, we make assumptions sometimes, right? We make assumptions that, oh, those people know better, or whatever they said must be good because they're technical people, or whatever. Oh, I'm not technical, so therefore I don't belong in this conversation asking these questions. And it's like, these AI tools are a real equalizer, and they can really help you ask the right questions, push back a little bit, right? All those types of things.
Yeah, I want to highlight something you said there too, because I think it's a great example and use cases. We always talk about being the human in the loop and vetting content and vetting what comes out. And in your case there, you weren't specifically the person to vet that content. So you brought it to somebody who was. And
Yeah,
like you said, it was a really good proof point that it worked well. But, be the human in
100%.
the loop. And if you're not the human to vet it, find a human who is.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, big story number 3. The headline is Hotels say AI is boosting productivity across operations. So, this is an industry report from Hotel News Resource, and it's highlighting how hotels are using AI to cut response times, automating guest communications, improving pricing models, and managing actually multilingual inquiries. What I liked about this article is they are saying this is now mainstream operations for hospitality, and that hospitality is becoming an AI native. That is no longer optional in this industry. It's required. And these aren't kind of edge use cases. They're mainstream. So I love to see this. I'm sure you'll agree, but I'll open the floor to you for comment.
Yes, I do agree. Although I will say that in this article, they didn't necessarily talk about kind of large multinational hotels versus small independents as much
Mhm.
as I would have liked to have seen, because I suspect that this probably is speaking more to the large multinational hotel chains than it is to the small independents. They're probably a little more ahead, and they've been experimenting more, those large organizations. And so I certainly would like to see the data on the smaller ones, but I suspect they're a little bit more behind and a little bit not quite there yet. But no, it is good to see. And I think, it's interesting. Tourism, as much as it's seen as this laggard industry from a tech adoption perspective, certainly this AI revolution has put tourism front and center in terms of like consumer adoption. Consumers are all over this stuff. It's wild how much consumers are using this. And then, even if you look at all of the announcements and all the dev days and all that, they're always tourism examples. They're always, yeah, I'm going to use, my agent to go book a trip to this and that and do this, whatever. Those are always the examples that they use, because I feel like it's like the most easy to understand application, but that immediately causes inspiration for people for using these tools in those ways. So, I mean, so it's interesting. As much as like sort of like hospitality and tourism is lagging, or is known as a laggard industry, it's like we're being forced. Our hand is being forced by consumers, and I think that's a good thing. So my recommendation here is, if you're not on this train, you're behind, and you need to get on it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about that little big chains versus small hotels. Like, what are some good entry points for the smaller properties to be able to adopt AI without causing major disruption in their operations?
Yeah, for sure. So I think the easiest place is really your website is a good place to start, is guest-facing communications tools. Those are fairly high impact, low risk entry points. So chatbots on your website, live chat on your website, those types of things. Obviously, even just structuring your website better. So we talk about generative engine optimization, or AI search optimization. And so really even getting your website ready for to be found by AI tools and to be able to answer people's questions. At the end of the day, all of this comes down to being able to answer questions. And so the websites and the hotels and the small independent hotels who are best at that are going to do well in this. And obviously, things like chatbots and tools like that are great. Certainly, dynamic pricing are tools that have been out on the market for a while. And I feel like more and more hotels probably are starting to dabble in this and should dabble in this more. Revenue management tools similar to dynamic pricing are good kind of entry points. But yeah, there's lots, right? Lots of ways you can get going on this that aren't going to break the bank, and are, quite frankly, things you should be doing anyways. What I'll say about all of this, AI agents, these tools for hotels, it all comes down to the same thing, which is like getting your data in order and getting your data cleaned up and making sure things are structured properly. So unfortunately, you still got to do that unsexy work that I keep telling everybody they got to do before you can really leverage and take advantage of these tools, right? So, that's really the starting point for every company, no matter what.
Unsexy work. I think we'll just keep repeating and hammering in that message as much as possible.
Yeah, and interestingly, Kendall, I listened to a podcast this weekend where the guy was talking about, what happened was his assessment was that companies were going all in on AI training, and they were all in on sort of that unsexy work that had to happen. And then the agents came in, and all these agents offered all this promise, and agents are going to be amazing, and they're going to be able to do all the work for you. And then now everybody's come back to a realization of like, well, the agents are only as good as the organization of the information and the data and all that kind of stuff. And so he's saying his I guess conclusion was that we're sort of going back to now the importance of all of this unsexy work so that we could get the agents to work. And so he was sort of saying 2026 is going to be the year of context engineering and context orchestration and AI literacy, because again, the tools are only as good as the humans and as good as the information that they have to work with, right? So
Hmm. Yeah.
it's all got to start there, Kendall. It's all got to start there.
It reminds me of how I clean my house. My husband is always walking around when I'm cleaning because, like, pull everything out and like I'll pile it all on the bed and it looks like chaos. But in my mind, I'm like, it has to get messy before I can organize. Like, right? I have to
Right.
just like get everything in a pile and then I clean and then I put things away. It's kind of like the same with how I feel like companies have to deal with their data, right? It's like this big mess and it has to be a mess first before it can get organized and then the agents will come
Yeah.
in and do the work.
But the nice thing is that I think that there's tools being built and developed, even our tool that we're going to build, where you're going to be able to take all that messy data and turn it into structured, clean data with the help of AI, which is going to be great. And I think so, my advice to people is like, go ahead and get a live chatbot going on your website, even if your data is not that clean, because what's going to happen is it's going to force your hand, right? You're going to start seeing answers. You're going to start looking at how it's digesting your website or ingesting your website and spitting out answers, and you're going to quickly you're going to see those holes and those gaps, right? And so it's better to start that way. And even the process of putting on a chatbot or getting a chatbot going, it forces you to, what are the common questions? What are the common answers? Right? Like, what is the information that needs to be in here? It sort of forces that conversation. So as you and I discussed, Kendall, we're actually repositioning a tourism AI network a little bit, slightly away from just like learning AI literacy first to AI implementation with AI literacy baked into the service, right? So that it's like, you know what, let's just get going on some implementations. And then while we're doing the implementation, we're going to train you on how to actually use the thing that we're implementing so that it all comes together at the right time, right? And I think that's sort of a good way to think about all of this.
I think hands-on training is always the best option, right? Hands-on
Yeah.
tools.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
we often talk a lot about AI replacing jobs. And I think tourism and hospitality is a really kind of easy one to throw that statement at. But what are some new roles or even skill sets that you see emerging in like the tourism workforce that's AI augmented?
Yeah. So first of all, I think I make this point often, but I don't actually see AI as a threat to labor as in tourism as much as I see it in other industries, just because we're pretty short on labor anyways. We don't have enough people to do the work. So I think it's actually an AI augmented workforce that we're going to be talking about. But certainly data analysis is going to be more and more important. Like even sort of human review, right? So we've talked about this before, Kendall, where it's like, yeah, I can get AI to spit out 15 deep research reports, but I'm still the human that has to go through all that and see if it makes sense. And so, you know what I mean? Like analyzing that, what it's spitting out, analyzing the data, analyzing the outputs and understanding, you need an experienced professional to sort of like have a critical eye on all that stuff. And does this make sense? Is it right? Is it accurate? Is it confusing? All that kind of stuff, right? And so, all of that. Certainly AI management, so training AI models, monitoring their performance, troubleshooting issues, right? Making sure that the chatbot's providing accurate information, and maybe if it's not, figuring out where it's getting the information from so you can update that information. So again, that sort of goes into this human oversight kind of piece. And then really, I think, hopefully it sort of allows people to be back on the ground and having good soft skills to be amazing tourism and hospitality people and amazing hosts, right? So
Mhm.
I think that's always been sort of the core skill of hospitality. But I think when people are bogged down in working on computers on mindless things, it makes them a little bit less available for those types of sort of human to human interactions and those wow experience in tourism that I think we all look for. So hopefully it'll free some time for people to do more hospitality, which would be a great thing.
Yeah, my last question related to this article is the role of like DMOs or like tourism boards, associations. What role do they have in like training the hospitality sector in their region? Do you think that they kind of should be responsible for that or have a hand in it?
I do. I think tourism boards or destination management DMOs or whatever, depending on the jurisdiction, have a huge role to play. I think they should be the stewards and the facilitators of these conversations. At the end of the day, and they are. They're already playing that role. So obviously, I speak at a lot of conferences. I'm doing more and more workshops. All those types of things, and these are things that DMOs need to be leading on, right? And so similarly, setting industry standards. So for example, responsible AI's policies and principles. DMOs should be creating those in a comprehensive way and then sharing them with their partners helping their partners adopt some AI policies and principles, right? Like be the leader, learn on their
Mhm.
own, and then share that learning with their members. I think would be a valuable way for them to play a role. Also, obviously providing education and resources. So selfishly partnering with Tourism AI Network and organizations like ours, making that training available, making those resources available, those types of things, and then really emphasizing that people first approach. Really just sort of like leading around kind of where AI fits in and where we still need to be sort of great humans, providing great tourism experiences, and sort of always playing the role of teacher when it comes to reminding the industry that we're at the end of the day we're here to serve humans and provide great experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's pretty on point with what I was thinking as well. It definitely, when you have so many small little businesses, it's hard for each of them individually to go on and explore these things on their own. So coming together with the community, with their colleagues, I think is a great opportunity for everyone to learn together. Okay, we're gonna head into some rapid fire round here. And the first one is Elon. I don't know if it's just me. I feel like he was in the news so much there for a while, and it's been kind of quiet on the Elon front. But he has recently made an announcement, and it is that he plans Grokopedia, and this is an AI-powered rival to Wikipedia because we know we've heard in the past that he feels Wikipedia is full of bias, and he wants to build an online encyclopedia that has no bias in it. Thoughts? Hype meter? What do you think?
I don't know, man. Like this is just Elon being Elon, I guess. I like the guy literally like changes his algorithm of Grok to say the things he wants it to say, and I don't know. Like, he's just not. I love Elon. I think he's an amazing human being. But when it comes to bias in AI, I don't know if he's necessarily the most credible voice in the industry. So he's just going to do what he does. I'm going to give this one like a 3 out of 10 on the hype meter. I mean, just to say Grokopedia is not going to be much more biased or less biased. Who decides what bias is? I mean, this is like a very complicated topic. And
Mhm.
I guess billionaires will just create their own anti-bias software and tools to, make sure their bias is front and center.
It just also seems like such a huge undertaking. Like, is this a priority in the world right now? Like, undertaking building out a whole new Wikipedia. It's wild, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, he called Wikipedia Wokepedia in the past, right? And and it's like interesting because like Wikipedia is actually built on, to get a Wikipedia page kind of going, you actually have to have third party sort of credible sources,
Mhm.
which is typically newspapers and publications, which I guess you can
Fake
argue
news.
they're fake news. Yes, fake news. You need to add, references to fake news stories and all the things, right? So, I mean, I don't know. I guess this is one way to approach it. I guess the other way to approach it is to have your own set of fake news channels and places. I mean, I don't know. The whole world's kind of going crazy when it comes to bias, I think, and
Mhm.
media and the whole thing, right? I mean, there's like, if you think about it, we have like just a few billionaires competing for what is not unbiased media or unbiased storytelling or whatever. I just wonder if this will just push people away from the whole technology field more than anything else. Um,
Interesting.
I predict that's one part of the future. People just completely unplugging and shutting off and walking away from all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have those moments.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. The next one is Anthropic's anti-China stance triggers exit of star AI researcher. And so this was a leaked doc, and it showed some internal rules that block subsidiaries of Chinese companies from accessing its AI services globally. And so, yeah, this kind of raises again some questions about bias, censorship, and AI values.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one is pretty high on the hype meter for me, only because I have a pretty hardcore anti-China bias when it comes to AI tools and technology in general as well. So I gotta say, I kind of see myself as agreeing with Dario Amodei and Anthropic on this one, though it's quite interesting, right? Obviously, this is a pretty high-profile person, very, very intelligent person, obviously a star sort of person. Now is at Google's DeepMind because of this position from Anthropic. So, it's just an interesting one. I think we're going
Mhm.
to see more and more of this. Is Dario Amodei just trying to align himself with the Trump administration here to get brownie points, or does he really believe this? I don't know the guy, obviously, so I tend to think he probably this aligns with his beliefs. But again, you have kind of pretty wealthy, influential people making decisions based on their opinions of what's biased and what's not biased, and it's got an impact on all of us, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, it's just I think the big messy world we're living in now.
Yeah, and interestingly, not to add a layer of complexity to this, but speaking of news sources, this article was actually posted originally on South China Morning Post. So it's a Chinese article, and I couldn't find it really anything about this in any like US news media. So, anyways, just an interesting tidbit there too.
It is an interesting tidbit, actually. Yeah, you got to wonder if this actually really happened. I don't know. I just think we're just in this world now where it's so hard to believe anything. We're not even talking about Sora 2 in this podcast today, although maybe we could, is a deep fake world and the world of fake information. And it's just going to become so extreme in every direction. And it's going to
Yeah.
be really messy, I think, for a while.
Totally. Well, let's add an agenda item for a new business at the bottom of these questions here and take a minute to talk about Sora.
Yeah, actually, I want to talk about two things: Sora and agent mode in ChatGPT.
Okay, added to new business. So the next one on the hype meter is Expedia and Perplexity have launched an AI itinerary tool. What's interesting about this one is Juan on our team actually posted that Perplexity launched a new browser called Comment. I actually, until I started reading the article, I didn't realize that it was built with Expedia as well. So it's very integrated with the travel industry. And so this platform or browser, I guess, has developed AI agents and interfaces across apps via ChatGPT. And it's all for powering smart trip planning, which I haven't used it yet. So I'm really curious to test it out. But I guess hype meter in terms of like a big travel company partnering with an AI company to build something like this specific to the tourism industry.
Yeah, I think it's a very big deal, and I think this is like to me a 10 out of 10 on the hype meter, but probably not for the reasons a lot of people would think. For me, it's obviously Expedia is trying to do everything they possibly can to stay at the forefront as an OTA, and to make sure that local hotel brands and that everybody has to use their basically is forced into their technology. So yeah, I mean, good for Expedia, a big company with lots of money and lots of reach, and they're using that money and reach as much as possible to make sure that they are the big fish in this big pond. And my advice to hotels and others in the tourism industry is obviously be paying attention to what's going on here, but obviously also be paying attention to what you can do to make sure you can compete, against these big OTAs. You can be found online. We're in an interesting time right now where I think it's possible for small brands to compete, but they have to be willing and they have to try and they have to take risks and they have to, do things. I am having some conversations with some others around this concept that I've mentioned on this podcast before of this, kind of community-based OTA concept where the DMO is maybe a social enterprise OTA. And I think it's got a lot of promise in today's world. But obviously, this is the headwinds that initiatives like that are facing, and that Expedia is not just going to go away because Expedia's got a lot of resources to try to make sure that they are it when it comes to travel planning. But at the same time, Google's also trying to be it when it comes to travel planning, and all of them are trying to be it. So, it's a very competitive space, let's just say. And everybody's competing for that search because search equals percentage of the revenue that your hotel has to give away to these tools. And so, you know, just that's my warning about all of this is don't just give away all your revenue. Start investing in your own brand and your own hotel and your own website and local initiatives because Expedia is here for Expedia. As much as they help you and help the traveler, which is wonderful, they're a business and they're just trying to make money.
Absolutely. Okay, let's just jump to our new business items here. Let's take a minute to talk about Sora. You downloaded that last week and have been playing around with it. You also gave me an access code, and I have also been playing around with it. Just haven't shared anything yet.
Can't wait to see your videos.
Like, what's your experience been? What are your initial thoughts?
I don't know. I think it's like super fun. Especially, I'll just give credit to OpenAI for launching Sora with the cameo feature in it because that's what makes it really sticky from like a rollout perspective. It's so fun. My kids are just like, make a video about this, make a video about that. Does it have any commercial value in its current form? Absolutely not. But will it in the future? 100%, right? And so, for me as a guy that presents at tourism conferences, it's given me a really amazing way to like add some fun interactive videos into all of my presentations. Amazing. And I think it's just, obviously it's a kind of a bit of a beta rollout and they're gonna have to figure out their pricing model because I suspect it's probably pretty expensive for Sora to have, you know, 800 million users making cameo videos if it rolls out to the whole world. So, for now, obviously it says made by Sora and there's sort of markers, but I can see this as, for small tourism brands and for small companies, this is a game changer from a marketing perspective. The ability to kind of make fun, creative marketing
Mhm.
videos in seconds that are just amazing with their detail and their quality. It's just amazing. So yeah, I mean, I just expect the world of marketing to drastically change. And interestingly, though, it's also creating a lot of AI slop, as like people like to call it, just like videos that have no value. I've created a few myself, but they're so fun.
Yeah, I think you just nailed it there. I think right now it's like entertainment purposes. My former colleague, who's a videographer at the university here, he does amazing work and he had tried doing like a campus tour video with it and it was horrible. And so I think like for now in that kind of space, there's definitely, it's not a concern for competition, like you said, yet, but it's so fun to play around with. It's entertaining. I like can see it just I've watched a few that are just like amazingly funny. Like it's like almost to me it feels like a TikTok, right? Like you're just kind of scrolling through, laughing at videos, being creative, but
And
yeah.
even Sora, kind of the way they launched it, it's almost like a TikTok style app, right? Where it's just like videos that you
Yeah,
can watch that other people made, like a platform type thing. So, that's
right.
literally like there's an endless scroll slop place that you can just waste hours hours of a day. But I think I've also seen brands play with this and be fun and have fun with it and be creative with it. But you just got to do so carefully, right? And be transparent. Hey, we're playing around with these tools and we're making fun little videos, whatever, right? But again, it's just a matter of like give it 6 months, and all of a sudden we're going to see this video capability commercially available at this quality or better for every brand in the world, and that's going to be a big game changer for the entire industry.
hmm Yeah, I wonder, like right now, I actually really like that it still has the Sora kind of like watermark on it because I think it's important for people to see that. I mean, I watched a video of like this moose coming and eating like Halloween candy and then getting scared by something on the porch and like it
Yeah, I
to me
saw
at
that. Yeah,
first, yeah, did you? I looked almost like real to me at first. I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. And then I saw the Sora,
Sora.
sorry,
Yeah,
Sora, and I was like, oh. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, just for people who aren't as in the AI world, I think it's like just being upfront and transparent about when things are made with it is important. But anyways,
yeah,
so
yeah.
far it's fun. And I'm just like, you're creative, like the videos you've made. I'm like, how did you think of this? Because I like when I go to try to make a video, I'm like, I just like totally blank out. I'm like, man, I think I've outsourced too much of my creativity. So it'll be
Nice.
a good test to maybe test myself there. Awesome. Any other thoughts before AI agents?
No, let's talk about agent mode from
Okay.
ChatGPT
Sure, yeah. What have you been doing on there?
because I've been playing with it and it's incredible. So this is something this is kind of back a little bit to the Expedia conversation we had in terms of like making sure your brand is findable, shoppable, all the things is so important. So, I put in some videos into my presentation I'm giving this week in BC showing agent mode, but I only did it in context of, hey, I'm going to northern BC, tell me what to do, those types of
Mhm.
things. But on Friday, actually, I was at my kids' hockey, and me and Christina decided we are going to go out for dinner. And so I basically put it in agent mode in ChatGPT. I wanted to see if it could book my dinner reservation, and it booked the entire thing. I got to like it went through the entire process. So it found. So I said we're going to Hayden Block for 7 o'clock, 4 people. My email address is this. My phone number is this, and then and you can watch it. It's really neat. You can watch it, go through websites, select 4 people. select 7 o'clock, find tables, pick a table. Like you're watching it do all of these things, and it made the entire booking for me. I probably could have made that particular booking faster myself, but I mean, that's just one small example.
Mhm.
Imagine booking an entire trip with itineraries and all this kind of stuff, and imagine you have a custom GPT with all the answers to all the questions. I mean, holy cow, it's pretty powerful stuff. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Did you happen to notice, like, does it booking direct on the restaurant's website or like through OpenTable or?
So in this case, this restaurant, they booked through on the website through OpenTable, so that's what it booked it through. But again, it really speaks to the really critical importance of having the ability for tourism and hospitality brands to have the full booking capabilities available on their website or wherever through whatever partner they're using. So, yeah, I mean, it really speaks to
Hmm.
things have gotten real really really quick. Right now, all of a
Yeah.
sudden agents can literally book things and make recommendations. I interestingly, I for the Northern BC tourism conference I'm going to, I just said I'm going to Northern BC for a trip, make it awesome. So very broad kind of instructions, and it gave me like an itinerary for a 2 week trip. And one of the restaurants it booked me into, I forget what it's called, but it was like a super super tiny restaurant where it's like you show up and we'll just cook for you when you get here.
Wow.
Like super,
Yeah.
super tiny restaurant. Really, I was like, man, that looks like a cool place. I'd love to go
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Obviously, found this place, right? So
Mhm.
it speaks to me a lot of like the other thing was interesting about that Northern BC tourism search was, and I put this into my presentation, but it went to Northern BC tourism. I went to Indigenous Tourism BC. Like those are the websites that it went to, like those third party sort of verification websites, if you will. More trusted kind of than it didn't go to any of the like websites of the actual brands. So that speaks to the importance of industry partnerships, PR, digital PR, right? So your marketing strategy really needs to incorporate these things. And again, speaks to me the role of a DMO. And this possibility of the DMO playing this sort of online travel agency sort of broker
Mhm.
role because those are trusted sources, right? So it didn't go to Expedia. It didn't go to any of
Right.
the Travelocity sites. It didn't go to any of those. We have a lot of experimentation to do on this, but it was really this tool is really cool. It's really something, and it definitely speaks to me to the future of the web. These agentic tools are amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And even if you said it would have taken you just as long to make the reservation yourself, it gives you the opportunity to multitask, right? You do this task for me while I do this task. So it's more
I put
efficient in
my
that
phone down
regard.
and I was watching my kid play hockey, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
like that's amazing.
No, that's
And
incredible. Uh,
actually it probably would have been faster, but I didn't at first give it my like all my information. So then it like came back to me and said, I need this information for you to be able to finish
Gotcha.
this booking or whatever. There was another part, I can't remember this search, but I did another search somewhere. Oh yeah, I know. So I also had it analyze a client's analytics just to see how it would do. And I said, analyze year over year and then this month versus last month. And look for these things. And so we, as an agency, use agency analytics. And so it was cool because I just said, "This is what I want you to do." It gave it the agency analytics page, and it needed a password. And so what it allowed me to do, it sort of stopped and said, switch into human operator mode. I don't remember what they called it. Put in your password and then switch back into agent mode. And so I did that. I logged into the website, into the tool, and then I went back into agent mode. And then it went in and it was changing the dates. It was doing a comparison year over year. I mean, it was incredible. It was like really like
That is.
watching magic happen, honestly. So
Right?
it's really cool. I really like the fact that it's similar, it reminds me similar to reasoning models. And I always tell people, like, if you want to get intuitively understand how these models work and how these tools work, like, look at the chain of thought it goes through when it's actually like answering your question and see how it's thinking through the different steps. This is similar where you could see the different websites it goes to. You could see how it's cross-referencing information. You could see it's talking to itself while it's going. It's a really good way to build AI intuition and understand how these tools work. And if you're obviously, my advice to everybody listening to this podcast is, put in some search terms, tell an agent, go into agent mode, tell it some search terms that are relevant to your property or to your tourism experience in your geographical region and see what it goes through and see how it goes in and where it finds information, how it goes through its process. That'll give you some hints as to what you need to do from a brand perspective to make sure that you get sort of, you're part of the answer next time if you're not this time.
Really great advice. Okay, so I have some homework for you. You have a ton of traveling coming up in the next few months with public speaking and workshops, like pretty much all across Canada. I would
Yes.
love for you to, in one of these trips, like do an agent mode, make a reservation or something that it recommends, and bring back like some feedback about your experience, like if you follow through with it.
Well, Kendall, I have a trip going to New Brunswick where I'm literally going to spend the entire week in New Brunswick because of just the way the flights and timing worked out for everything. So I might just do that entire trip at the whim of agent mode, and maybe I'll record and sort of do a bit of a podcast vlog about the whole experience. And I will make no decisions on my own.
I love it. I can't wait to hear about that.
Nice.
Cool. Nice. Well, thanks for the conversation today. We covered a lot of ground, and like you said, data sovereignty was definitely a key point there. So it's an always evolving world, I think, with lots of room for discussion. We'll probably continue talking about data for a long time yet. So hang on to your hats, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Kendall.
Okay, talk to you later.